Hello, my name is Shane Bassett, the movie analyst, your host, and today is a special day for me because this is someone I've been watching the work of for quite some time, and now we're getting to chat because of a new movie called Perpetrator. Hello, Jennifer Reeder from Sydney.
Hello, Shane. How are you? From Chicago.
How's Chicago going at the moment? All everything cool, nothing happening over there I should know about.
No, Chicago is it's we're having a perfect um kind of proper Midwestern fall. It's gotten kind of
Yeah,
crisp and the leaves have started to change color and yeah, I love this time of year. I love when the seasons change in general. So
yeah.
and we had a very hot summer, so it's actually quite nice to pivot to the cooler weather.
Yeah, it's good to hear because it's. I also could say hello from the future because it is Thursday afternoon here in
Right.
Queensland. No, it's Friday afternoon. Of course, what am I saying? I'm going back in
Yeah.
time. Uh, I've got to ask: have you ever been down under? Have you ever visited Australia at all for any reason?
I haven't, and it's so sad because my films have been to Sydney, have been to Melbourne. Like my films have, and of course, Shudder Perpetrators on Shudder, and
Yeah,
Shudder covers North America, Australia, and New Zealand. So I feel like I have, and this is the third film that I've made with Shudder. So I feel like I've got this a kind of a some fans down under, so to say, but I've not been. And I've heard from so many of my friends, other filmmakers, artists, musicians, who have who have visited Australia, that it's absolutely
yeah,
gorgeous and probably not unlike so many other people. The sort of the animal life of Australia is both intimidating in terms of the snakes and the spiders, but my gosh, you all make it up with the koalas and the kangaroos.
yeah. Well, we have
In
something like
terms of kind of like curiosity and cuteness. I mean, I think the koalas are cute. The kangaroos seem a little more intimidating. But yeah, I've got to get down there, get down and over.
I hope so because there's a lot of productions that happen down under, and there's things happening, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of
Yeah.
international productions come down under and use local filmmakers, actors, and so forth. So it's something you should pursue, hopefully. And as you say, Shutter is huge in Australia. So
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand, Australia, even the UK and the US seem to be the four
Mm-hmm.
territories where Shutter really.
Right. That's right. Yeah. UK as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So friends of mine, across Europe and Asia, are very envious, because the Shutter has not, doesn't reach there quite yet. So we depend on a different kind of international distribution. But yeah,
Yeah.
you all in Australia and New Zealand, and Tasmania, maybe. What is that territory of? Yeah.
That's still Australia. We call it. It's
That's
still
okay.
a state. Yeah, it's separated, but it's still a state. It's like
Right,
Hawaii.
like physically separated, but I wasn't sure whose territory that belonged to. I thought Australia, but I wouldn't want to assume it.
And another link with Australia and you is Alpha Shannon, and he came down under and made a movie called Kangaroo Jack many years ago.
Yes, right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I've made a film with him, obviously Night's End, and I'm very
Yeah,
good friends with his wife, Kate Arrington, who was giving me kind of daily posts during their like 2 week quarantine,
wow.
because he went to Australia before her, and then she followed with their two young daughters. And it was at a time of that very, very closed world, where they were not even allowed to like leave their hotel room. Everything was delivered. And so she was like, I'm having ballet class in my hotel room with my two daughters. Or, I mean, it was a lot. And that was very close to the time that I had done my section for VHS 94, which is also
Yeah,
a Shutter film. And we had shot that in Toronto, and Toronto at that time was also, or Ontario was, a shelter in place. And so we were both comparing notes, where I also had to quarantine for 2 weeks in in an Airbnb. I was not in a hotel, but it was still that sense of, isolation. I mean, I really hope that we don't go back to that. That was tough for everybody, for sure. And we're all very thankful that like productions were able to happen. Sure. And I do think that in Australia and New Zealand, I had lots of friends who were shooting. I think that wasn't Megan shot there, the Divide and Conquer film, or was that shot in New Zealand?
I think it was New Zealand. Yeah.
Okay, because Divide and Conquer was involved with Perpetrator as well, and so I was in contact with Adam Hendricks, who was doing the same thing in New Zealand, who was posting video of him and his wife doing like walking around the parking lot before they went back to quarantine in their hotel room.
Yeah. I said Kangaroo Jack, which Michael Shannon did come to Australia for to make about 20 years ago, but you were referring to Big Little Lies, which was a lot more recently.
Okay. So, that sounds right. Mm-hmm.
And X and Pearl were also filmed in New Zealand as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
People don't realize that, and they've been big hits. Mm-hmm. Your heritage and background, how did you go from art school to making these interesting horror movie thrillers that are getting shown around the world in a nutshell?
Sure. So, I mean, when I was in art school, I was still only making film and video work. I was never doing painting or drawing or sculpture. I mean, I was surrounded by other people doing painting and drawing and sculpture, but I was making moving image work that lived in a gallery and museum. So I was doing, big kind of installation based moving image work. And I at the same time I was one, always trying to tell a story with that moving image work, even if it seemed more abstract. I was also right. And I was also growing, like more and more dissatisfied with how my work was being consumed. I just thought like, I really was wanting to make work that would live in the cinema. I was always disappointed when people would kind of walk by the work, even if it was giant and projected and cinematic, people would walk by it. And I thought, not even myself as a consumer of creative things would sit and watch an entire, moving image project in a gallery or museum. That's not what those spaces are built for.
Mm.
So in the, I would say like early 2000s, I sort of made a commitment to myself to kind of pivot away from the art world with a capital A and make a movie, so to say, And at that time, also what was difficult was, in the States, there were very few like American women doing feature-length independent films.
Martha
Coolidge, Allison Anders, Julie Dash. I mean, there was like, Jane Campion had been doing some really interesting things. Obviously,
I think.
Yes, Agnes Varda, Chantal Ackerman. I mean, there were women outside of the U.S. who were making pretty interesting moves. But if I was looking at the kind of, female-led American independent movement, it was like a very small amount of women. And I just couldn't figure out how to kind of get there. It just felt like really far away. But what I knew from my art life was this kind of DIY sensibility. I'd come out of a kind of third wave riot girl feminism, thinking about Kathleen Hanna and Bikini Kill and all the energy around that kind of activist art movement, where it didn't matter if you knew how to shoot film, like just shoot the film. I mean, I knew how to shoot film, like, but I was also kind of like, I'm going to just do it myself. And so I taught myself how to write a script. I taught myself how to direct. And in the early days, it was much more in a kind of John Cassavetes method, even though I didn't really know how he was making films, I found out later, I was like, oh, that's what I did too. I mean, I would gather together friends of mine who were good at storytelling
Yeah.
or were interesting to look at.
That's good. Yeah.
And and I would explain a kind of a scenario to them, a scene, and say, okay, can you guys kind of improv that out, just like, what would that sound like? And some lines I would write down, and the other lines I was like, okay, no, switch it. Like, you be the clown and you be the cop or whatever. And so it started out again, like in a very organic way, just building stories with my friends. And I also came to the art world as a pretty serious ballet dancer. I feel like my hair is still indicative of that on some level.
Yeah, it's fine. It looks awesome.
Right. And so I uh, the what I had learned from being a ballet dancer is still so much about how I approach feature length narrative filmmaking. I mean,
Mm.
like the ballet, it's like, it's gothic, and it's, I mean, also just a ballet dancer's life is gnarly. I mean, I don't want to show you my feet, and my feet still bear the evidence of all of that, but I think about the proscenium, the arch it's a frame. And the way that I use music in my films,
Yeah.
I use a lot of music in my films, but I learned to tell stories through movement in a frame to music, so my life as a ballet dancer is, that's the trajectory even to where I am right now. And again, like, from Giselle to Black Swan to even something like The Nutcracker, these beloved kind of, seminal ballets. I mean, there's death, there's deception, there's blood, they're very gothic. Yeah. So there's my long story, probably longer than maybe you had anticipated, to where I got where I am.
No, we've got time. And also, you've sort of touched on what I was going to ask you a bit later, and I'll get back to it, because your dancing career and music, I think, is shown in your movies by the music choices that you make on the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get to that. But Perpetrator, to me, started off quite, I'm like, I wasn't engaged to begin with, and then it just growing and growing and grew on me. I really enjoyed it. But how long did it take to come together? And was it a long process? Because I know you've got a relationship with Shudder, which is terrific. And I think more eyes will be getting on it. And I hate to say it, because of Shudder, than if it was released at the cinema set.
Yeah. So right after my film Knives and Skin, premiered at the Berlin Film Festival in 2019. I mean, I was kind of ready to move on. I work fast. I have a lot of ideas. Yeah. I mean, I'm always like, yeah, let's just keep going and keep going. And so right after the Knives and Skin premiered in Berlin, I started writing Perpetrator, like really, in the spring of 2019.
Did the idea just come to mind, or did you have basis of it?
The idea came out of actually a lot of the press I was doing, even around short films leading up to Knives and Skin. Answering questions about my experience working with, girls and women. And, I mean, the reason that I make so many films about girls and women is because I like it, it's fun. And yet I was getting these questions as though, walking onto set with like 10 girls, 10 14-year-old girls, 20 14-year-old girls was just someone's nightmare, So I thought, oh, wow, like, we, at least in the US, are a culture that's completely obsessed with, girls or youth and beauty among girls and women. Definitely, and yet we also sort of hate teenage girls. We do so much to really disrupt their evolution. And we use terms like wild and out of control, to refer to maybe a young woman who has agency over her sexuality or agency just over her life. And a term like wild and out of control is never meant to celebrate, a young woman's agency. It's meant to diminish it. So I started thinking about that. I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, maybe I could make a film about, where we meet a wild and out of control teenage girl, so to say, and then she really becomes wild and out of control. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's a shapeshifter story, And so I kind of started, I took a weekend and watched a bunch of, kind of classic shapeshifter stories, including the 1980s iteration of Cat People, which is such a strange film, And, oh, just so brilliant. And so I thought, like, okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to make a kind of a provocative, nuanced, unexpected sort of coming of age shapeshifter story. And so I started writing it, and found producers and financing. Hold on one second. You guys, people. Some loudness in there. There was producers and people that were interested in helping me make this project, and I had every thought that we would make it maybe in the last quarter of 2020, and of course, like, we know what happened in the first quarter of 2020. So and so, what it did, though, was to allow me, what the pandemic did was to allow me to kind of, slow down and, like, kind of rethink, like, really rethink the script. There was a lot of cast that kind of came on and off at different times during 2020, 2021. Okay. And then we finally shot it in the spring of 2022 here in Chicago, which it was not originally set in Chicago. It was originally set in New Orleans, which is where the 80s iteration of Cat People takes place. I wanted to have a little bit of that kind of nod. And I also wanted the architecture of the city in a kind of very film noir way to feel like gothic and haunted. And New Orleans, or even Savannah, Georgia, here in the US, have this architecture. They're very haunted cities. They have, historically haunted cities, and the architecture is much more European, and the Spanish moss of Savannah. It just like oozes this kind of gothic shapeshifter energy. And both of those places during the pandemic became different places to make films. And so we started looking at other places to shoot, Perpetrator, and the state of Illinois, where I live, has a really, really good tax credit. And so, right. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just shoot it in Chicago. I love Chicago. I've shot other films in Chicago. I know there's, like, great cast and crew here. I can sleep in my own bed at night. And wouldn't that be great for the production if the director can sleep in her own bed? And so that's what we did. So March and April of 2022, we shot that film here.
Great name. Was it always going to be called Perpetrator? It's like a missing persons movie with a twist. And there's a lot more to it, obviously, but was it always going to be Perpetrator, or did you throw around different names?
No, it was originally called A Girl and Other Small Stains, which I will recycle that title. That feels like it's much more kind of out of my, that's my heart and head, A Girl and Other Small Stains. And one of the producers, Greg Chambay of What the Films, and had said to me, he wrote down something like Jennifer Reeder's Perpetrator on, like, a piece of paper, because the name Perpetrator, when the film had a different title, like, appeared over and over again. It was always like the Perpetrator. And so he had written down Jennifer Reeder's Perpetrator, and then he said, this is just a thought. Like, what if we named it Perpetrator? There's something that's really strong and bold about that title. You have never done anything that's been, like, one word. And so I had to think about it. I was like, no. And then I was like, all right, hold on. Let me take the weekend and think about it. And then, I thought, yeah, I'm going to name it something that's quite bold. Speaking of, another Australian, when Karen Kusama made Destroyer with Nicole Kidman, I was like, an incredible film. But the name itself, Destroyer, with, like, a female lead, I was like, that's awesome. That's really bold. And so I kind of felt like it was my sort of iteration of a female-led, maybe complicated story that had one single word, very strong, evocative word. So
I like it. It's interesting because I found a lot of the editing was abrupt, like it was sort of all over the place at times, not in a bad way. But were there changes during production or post? Did you have to change it a bit? Like, did you have too much, film and you had to narrow it down?
Yeah.
How did that work? It seems like there might have been extra footage somewhere.
Yeah, there was a lot of extra footage that got cut out. And I think that, when I read the press around, when there's these questions about like maybe some gaps in the story, we shot all that footage. And, I think that this is like Perpetrator, and I have no problem saying this. I don't feel I feel satisfied with the final edit, but I do feel like there's parts that are missing that I would have loved to have been fit back in. And I think I've learned, when you are working with multiple producers and you're working with a studio, which is like Shudder and AMC, that there's you have to fight for, like, you have to pick your battles. And so there are parts that I fought for that stayed in, and parts that they fought for that got cut out. And and it does, and I've learned a lesson in that regard, maybe to also figure out, like, kind of foresee what the studio will try to cut out when I'm writing it, so that I don't have to anticipate losing a scene that I feel like is actually really important narratively.
Yeah. Well, I get that maybe down the track you could have like a Jennifer Reeder's director's cut or
yes, exactly. Yeah. No, there were a couple of like very big scenes that got cut out closer to the beginning, that I will just recycle and put in other films, because I thought they were really great. But then even towards the end, some other moments that I feel like explain some things were cut out for time, and I think that's,
I get it.
And that happens to everybody, but it can be, it's like, it kind of hurts my heart sometimes when I read a review that says, like, there's like, we don't understand the gap in this sort of narrative. I'm like, oh, I shot that scene, I wrote that scene, I shot that scene. That scene exists somewhere, that explanation is, exists somewhere.
Yeah, as a movie analyst, I basically could tell there must have been a fair bit on the cutting room floor. But Shudder, they do Down Under anyway. They release some of their movies, handpick their movies to be released on physical media. So, and there's extra scenes and there's bonus features, so maybe that could happen as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a plan to release a DVD or like a Blu-ray.
Yeah, so, Blu-ray,
yeah, for sure.
Well, that's fantastic, because I collect physical media, as I think you do. We'll talk about that. Excuse me, I'll get the names wrong, but is it Kiah or Kiah?
Yeah, no, it's Kiah, exactly. Yeah.
Alicia, and of course Audrey Francis are the three I want to focus on. Audrey, I've always loved. You use her regularly, which is good. Firstly, how did you cast Kiah? You said you went through a few changes. Was she one of the changes that you made, or did you have her from the beginning? Because she really does hold the movie together in some sense, and I could take my eyes off her. She's wonderful.
Oh, Mike, she's just captivating. Yeah. So Kiah was, we held off on casting, on attaching a Johnny till kind of the very, so we knew what our dates would be, because it just was, for young actors, especially, they're in demand. I mean, there were TV shows that were still going on, and featuring young people. There were still films going that were featuring young people. And so we kind of held off on trying to cast Kiah till the very end, or cast Johnny till the very end. And so her name was on a list that came to me. And I had seen her in the HBO series Mare of Easttown with Kate Winslet.
Right, yeah.
And so she has a small but very memorable part in that series. And I'd seen that series. And so when my agent said, what about Kiah McKirnan? And I was like, oh my God, I loved her in Mare of Easttown. She's so captivating and, incredible in front of the camera. And very coincidentally, she had moved back to Chicago during the pandemic. She grew up in Chicago, but was living in New York prior to that,
Wow, that's
doing
great.
work in LA. And then she had, during the pandemic, when everything shut down, she had moved back to Chicago to be closer to her family.
Oh, that's good.
So exactly. So I talked to her, and she was one on a list of young actors I was talking to. But Kiah was the only actor that we were thinking about for Johnny who talked about how she in her own skin, as a mixed race queer woman, felt like she knew exactly how to sew herself into the skin of this character. And I wasn't looking for that answer. I just like to have conversations with young actors and see if they connect with the material. And a lot of young actors who are very talented, will say, well, I don't really like genre films, or there's for lack of a better word, red flags, where you think like, you have to be on set every single day. You're in every single scene. Like you have to commit to this story.
I wouldn't have thought at an audition you would say that you're not really into anything. You would be into it because you want to get that part.
And just say it. Even if you're not really into it, just say you are. Be an actor in that moment. But no, Kiah's answer was so direct and smart, and I thought, oh, okay, this person is going to be able to show up every single day, day after day, and really get into it. And also just be I just wanted Johnny, before you even hear her speak, I just wanted her physically to be someone that you're like, you lean in like, oh, who's this? Who is this? And so we were very lucky yet again that she was still living in Chicago when we shot here. So both the lead actor and the director got to sleep in their own beds at night, which made the set, I hope, much more pleasant.
The whole casting ensemble was good. I think the chemistry was all there for everyone to see when you watch. Some kids, younger actors, they look good, but they might not connect on screen. But you've got a good ensemble that works in Perpetrator. But before Audrey, I'll finish with Audrey, but Alicia, I want to mention next. I have to, because I'm sure Alicia gets mentioned in every interview you do.
Yeah.
And having watched her since I was a kid, Clueless and Excess Baggage and whatever, she's just always been there, the crush. How was she to work with? Did you already know her? How did that casting come about? Was she on a list, or did you have her from the beginning?
So I was thinking about her. I wanted to work with her even back with Knives and Skin. I thought that she was has a very interesting provenance as someone who was introduced to the world as a teenager.
Yeah.
As a real teenager. I mean, she was 18 when Clueless was made, but she was, Cher Horowitz is supposed to be 16. I mean, she's like an iconic, she's an iconic teenager.
Amazing.
And I had seen her in Killing of a Sacred Deer, the Yorgos Lanthimos film.
Yeah, wow,
and
another great film, honestly.
Great film, and it's a small part but super memorable that she has. And she was also in another genre film called The Lodge with Riley Keough.
Yeah, I've seen it. I know. Yeah,
right.
Again, Riley Keough is also someone else who's just emerged recently. The last years. Yeah.
So I knew that as like a grown person in her mid-40s, that she was making some really interesting moves in the genre world. And Shudder loved her. Shudder was like, we would love to get her. And so I was
Are
like,
you?
okay, send her the script. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And so her team loved the script for her and actually said to her, this is kind of like a Yorgos script. It's a weird script. I think we think you'll like it. And so I wrote her a letter that said, how much I wanted to cast her as a matriarch of the shapeshifter family. And she would be the mentor to an iconic teenager, and that felt important because she herself was introduced to us as this iconic teenager.
Yeah.
And I further said to her, I want to pattern Hildy after the Catherine Deneuve character from The Hunger.
Oh yeah.
Right, this Marion Blaylock, this kind of structured hair,
Great
this
references.
very stylized way of talking. I had said that I wanted to also for her, to think about these classic Hitchcockian, cool blondes, Kim Novak from Vertigo, or Tippi Hedren from Marnie, or even kind of like a Diane Ladd from like Wild at Heart.
Heart, yeah. You're talking
these like gnarly blondes, and she was like, I'm in. I mean, it was crazy, like how fast she said, yes, let's do this.
So good.
And she was absolutely lovely to work with. I cannot wait to make another film with her. Watching her work on set was kind of a miracle. You can tell that she has been making films since she was, a small person. And you could give her like a whole table full of props and she would know exactly what to do with them every single time. Like for continuity, other actors sometimes are a little loosey-goosey, very intuitive, and that drives editors crazy. She was so professional. She knew exactly where her light was. So you could see her kind of at a moment of like drama, like move into her light or something. I mean, Oh my God, just incredible. And she's so smart. And, she is, so active around the environment and animal rights and, but not in a way that, like, I love that about her, but not in a way that sort of, where she walks around set wagging her finger at everyone, but she's just a good person. And she's a mom, also a good mom. And I thought that energy would last, or that energy not would last, but would like bathe the whole, her whole character. And no, she's become a very good friend of mine. And yeah, I can't wait to work with her again.
Yeah, please work with her again, Jennifer. She's having a bit of a renaissance, actually. Like you said, she's done a few things, and Killing of the Sacred Deer is probably the first time I saw her, but I've seen her in a few things since. I mean, in The Second Coming. Kate Bosworth actually is the same. She's popping up in these independent movies in small roles, sometimes, leads, and she's really coming back big time too, in a different genre as she was when she was younger. So
well, it's funny that you had mentioned her because I was talking early on in the casting process to Kate Bosworth about being in this film too. So
she's done some good stuff lately.
Yeah, I love her as well. Yeah, for sure. I'll figure out how to work with her too because I think that she's very smart and interesting.
Please, you're saying all the right things today. It's making you seem to love close-ups, and I like close-ups in movies. So Perpetrator has a lot of close-ups, slow-moving ones, faster ones, fangs, also just shape-shifting movements of the camera. And I don't want to use David Lynch as an example, but it feels best I should. Lynchian in some aspects, but I just love close-ups. Was that on purpose? Are you a fan of close-ups, obviously, or was it just this film that you really wanted to do it in?
No, I mean, in any of my films, I mean, from like day one, from the films I made 20 years ago, I mean, I love a close-up, and I think it has everything to do with really understanding what the what a camera lens is capable of. I mean, I can't, I'm wearing glasses now, but I mean, even like I can't like, but my so my focus is better than it is without my glasses on, but my actual eye cannot get as close in
Okay.
focus as a camera lens can.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like super macro lenses
Yeah.
can, can make can fill a whole cinematic, a screen in the cinema with like a tooth or an eye or something like this, like the
That's great.
most small parts of a human or human vulnerability. And I think that so much of my films are really about like human bodies and emotion through bodies, and the body is this fallible thing, which is a beautiful thing too. And the only way that you see that is through, I think, the moments of a human body that the human eye can't focus on if it gets that close.
Mm.
And then I think it's also goes back to a little bit like my life as a dancer. I mean, an audience experiences the ballet from very far away,
From distance,
and
yeah.
from a distance. And yet, having been a dancer myself, like from a distance, the ballet is just like lyrical and lilting and perfect. And when you are in the midst of a ballet as a dancer, the point shoes make noise, and you are sweating and you're breathing, like your body is doing all that stuff that the bodies do. But from a distance, it's all just like light and airy, and the breath is nothing, and no ballerina sweats, and the point shoes don't make any noise. It's like from a distance, it you can imagine that life
Oh yeah.
has no interferences. It has nothing that is like problematic or lumpy. And of course, we all know that the best parts of life are problematic and lumpy, and people breathe hard and they sweat and we bleed and all that. So being able to kind of like zoom in, to the closest parts of what makes us beautiful humans is I can't resist it. And working with some cinematographers, sometimes who are not all that interested in close-ups, I have to talk them into it. I mean,
Really?
it was not so hard with Sevdia Castrati, who is our cinematographer.
Yeah.
She also loved doing close-ups, but I've worked with other cinematographers or interviewed cinematographers where I'm like, how do you feel about close-up? Like, oh, I hate it. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Bye.
Yeah, well, I've only seen Signature Move as in your past movies and then clips and other parts of your shorts and your other features. But I mean, Signature Move also had plenty of close-ups, but in a different way because of the lot of the in the ring and stuff.
Right.
Audrey Francis, just briefly, you're her friend, obviously, you know her well. Talking about close-ups, I could watch her all day. She's just someone that came across my radar a while back, and I've been watching as much as I can of her career. So thanks for casting her again.
Well, and the thing about Audrey Francis is that, currently she is the co-director of the Steppenwolf Theater. I mean,
I didn't hear that, yeah.
And she was when I cast her for Signature Move and again for Knives and Skin, she was a Steppenwolf ensemble member. And of course, like, Steppenwolf is a theater company based here in Chicago that was founded partially by Gary Sinise and John Malkovich. I mean, it's a lauded, loved, I mean, so deeply respected theater company across the entire country. And she currently is the co-artistic director, or co-director rather, of the Steppenwolf. And so she is just this incredibly respected, dramatic actor, director, writer. And all I want to do is cast her in these kind of absurd roles, from Signature Move, where she was this kind of overly charismatic wrestling coach, to Knives and Skin, where she was a depressed mom who only wore the same talking tiger shirt.
Right.
And then in this one, where I just said to her, okay, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to be the school nurse, and we're going to progressively like wrap your face up more and more. in a kind of Terry Gilliam Brazil,
Yeah.
like my complications have complications, where your face is just going to get more wrapped up. And she was like, I don't care, whatever you want to do, I'll do anything you want. And she
Good.
is, oh my gosh. And I mean, I've got a place for her in every single film of mine. She's so brilliant and so smart. And yeah, so I appreciate that, that you want to mention her also, because yeah, of course, Kiah and Alicia are awesome. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Audrey Francis, I mean, for me, she's the gem of the film.
Yeah, no, I have a list of people that I'd like to speak with one day, and she's up there because, yeah, like I said, I've been watching her career, and you seem to use her in obscure ways. So I like that too.
Yeah,
Outside the book.
cool.
The poster design is very strong in my opinion of a good movie as well, and what grabs your attention. And now it's not really posters. A lot of the time they're thumbnails across the screen, such as Shudder. But your poster design's amazing. It hooked me in before I'd seen the movie. But anyway, so they did its job. What did you design it, help design it, or was there other suggestions made before you got to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I am very thankful that, even though, Shudder, who is, owned by AMC, I mean, it's a big company, and
Yeah.
I suppose at the end of the day, they don't have to ask me what I want or how I feel, but they
Okay.
have. And so with Night's End, and even, with VHS 94, I mean, and
Yep.
certainly with this one, I mean, I was so thankful to have multiple conversations with their creative team, where they were like, well, what are your, what's important to you about this story? And even about the trailer. We talked about the trailer, what should be in the trailer,
That's
which I
important.
feel
Yeah.
I love the trailer.
Mm.
And they said, about the key art, like what is important to you? And I was like, red is important. That
Mm.
font is important. This idea of kind of like morphing faces, that feels really important to me. And we did go through many iterations. It's not as though like I got the first one, I was like, I love it. I mean, I got the first version of it.
Yeah.
And I told my producers, I said, I just I hate it, but I can't say that to them. Like, how do we
Mm.
say how do we say that more nicely? And we definitely, like, it was a negotiation to get where we are right now.
Good.
And I love the
Yeah.
key art. And like I said, the trailer I love
Mm.
so much. I mean, that was a conversation where I said, you know, I want the song that's with the trailer to feel like it's that kind of 50s 60s kind of girl group,
Okay.
lilting song that feels antithetical to the sort of vibe of the film. And they just nailed it. I was so happy. And the
Yeah.
font that's both in the actual film in terms of the opening credits and the end
Opening credits
credits.
is terrific. Yeah. Yeah.
So part of that was, I mean, regardless of the Roman Polanski of it, I love Rosemary's Baby so much. And the opening credits of Rosemary's Baby has that very similar,
Mm.
very swirly,
Mm-hmm.
very feminine kind of a cursive
Yes.
font. Rosemary's Baby is in a kind of pale blue, which could be indicative of the fact that maybe she has a male
Mm.
devil baby at the end. No spoilers. If
We're all about
if any
spoilers.
if any of your watchers haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, then shame on them. But
Yes.
I thought, like, I really, once we knew, for instance, that the name of the film would be Perpetrator, I just thought, like, I just want to see this very strong word, perpetrator,
Mm.
in this very kind of feminine cursive, and even
Mm.
like this kind of pale pink or something. So I have, like, every step along the way, I've like had my hand in it. I mean, even though this was a
Good.
bigger budget than I've ever worked with, a bigger company than I've ever worked with, it still feels pretty handcrafted from my heart and my head.
Oh, I love it. I really respect the poster art, and that's up there for me. It's one of the better ones I've seen in a while. I love it. And I'm wearing a red tie in honor of it too.
I love it. No, you're very on brand.
And it's red. Music and dancing obviously go together, and we've spoken a bit about your dancing background. Music, there seems to be like musical influences with you, but would you be prepared to make a musical, make a horror musical? The Star Sisters song in Perpetrator is a terrific choice, by the way, but in the future, is that something you think of? Like, I'm not saying like Rocky Horror Picture Show or Repo, the Genetic Opera, but would you be prepared to make a musical? Do you like musical?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I feel like, I mean, I would, the funny thing is there actually was a musical number that was written into Perpetrator
Is that right?
that got jettisoned. It felt kind of out of
Didn't
place.
work.
It didn't kind of work right. But it was like Alicia and Kiah, and then Melanie Libbard, who plays Kiah's mother.
Yeah, right.
All kind of superimposed on each other, and they were doing a very lullaby version of Elvis's Devil in Disguise.
Holy moly, that sounds like Magnolia. And that
yeah, it's but it just didn't work, and so I was heartbroken. I had to jettison it. I mean, I would do. I mean, I feel like Knives and Skin is kind of a musical. You know, I mean, I like when diegetic singing becomes the something else. You know, so I would. I mean, I want to incorporate. You know, I've written recently two other scripts. Both. I mean, I can't resist. I love when people sing. You know, I can't. And having said that, I cannot sing at all. But I like when there are moments that kind of break the reality of the film with singing, but not in the way that like traditional musicals have. Like I don't like the way that maybe someone is just, you know, explaining their day, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're just like, I gotta go to bed right now or whatever. Like it turns into something that feels
music.
No, I'm not so, I mean, and I'm not necessarily, I'm a consumer of like a small group of musicals, you know, that I like to watch. But no, music is very important to me in my films, but also you know, in my life. You know, I'm always trying to find new things to listen to, or go back to old things to listen to, and I'm very moved by music, and I'm very moved by the human voice. I think that's it. I think that the human voice, especially the human voice in a group, like that idea that a group of people could sing together, and the tone of that is just transformative. You know, I mean, that to me is, at the end of the day, so much about what my films are about, which is like, together we are better. I mean, that's like, I know that probably nobody looks at the whole roster of my films and is like, I feel like Jennifer Reeder's message is like, together we're better. But it is, you know, like, together we're better. If you looked at any of my films, at the end of the day, the message is together we're better. And I know that seems naive in this world that feels so hard and cruel right now, but we all know, in the face of tragedy, trauma, anything, that together we're better.
Oh, of course, yeah. Of course. I'm sure there's a lot of great indie bands in Chicago you could draw from too. You'll probably discover sometime the indie scene there. Music's always been a thing about in Chicago, so it could probably
well, here's a little nugget that I think that you in particular will appreciate. So at the end of Knives and Skin, we used this great song that's called Birds Fly, which I stand by. I quite love that song. But the original script for Knives and Skin, the very end song was supposed to be Don't Change by In Excess.
Oh, what a song. Classic.
Yes,
Classic song.
exactly. And I'm a huge In Excess fan.
Good to hear.
And it was from like very early on. And yet, like posthumous estates,
Mm.
and bands who have contention, it's like there was no way we could kind of figure out how to get the rights to that publishing. But I haven't given up because I love that song and so many other in excess songs, and I want to pay
Oh, yeah.
homage to that band and to Michael Hutchins, and
Yeah.
just like the poetry
Yeah.
and the energy of that time period and that band. So yeah, there's a little Australian nugget.
That's cool. I'll leave the story for another time, but I got to meet Michael Hutchins when I was a kid, backstage at a gig.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
pretty awesome.
That's cool.
And their songs do get licensed for certain movies, but not for a while. Like they had
Mhm.
songs in Crocodile Dundee, Pretty in Pink,
Yeah.
but yeah, not. And my advice, but they were all 80s, so I'm not sure what happens now with licensing, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
Yeah.
It'll be tough. I'll try and wrap this up as quick as I can. I'm keeping so much of your time. Is there any remakes? I know remakes are a thing, and some are good, some not so bad. Reboots and so forth. Are there any like classic? Well, you mentioned Cat People, probably not Cat People, but I'd like to see you collaborate with Paul Schrader on something
Mhm.
original.
Mhm.
However, are there any remakes or anything you loved as a kid or think you could improve? Any movies that you'd like to maybe use the basis of the story and change it. Like The Craft was something that got redone. Your movie Perpetrator doesn't, it's not like The Craft, but it has that sort of, it's on that wavelength in a way.
Mhm.
What movies do you think you could make or none at all, like remakes?
So for years now, I've been bothering my manager and my agent about my want to remake The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Yes,
Do you know this one with Faye Dunaway?
yes, I love Faye Dunaway. One of my
I
favorite
mean,
actors, actually.
I love that original film. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, However, it was like, and it was a script by John Carpenter, who's fantastic, and Faye Dunaway, who's amazing, Tommy Lee Jones. It was
All
directed
still
by
alive. They could cameo, maybe.
absolutely, and even it's this like, right, there's a female photographer, a fashion photographer in New York who starts to see the visions of people dying, which
Mm,
is such a cool premise. And yet even like the character Laura Mars's own photographs, she has
mm.
a big exhibition at the beginning of the film, and those are all photographs by Helmut Newton. Like the character's own, like everything about that film feels like male gaze, male gaze, male gaze.
So, yeah, yeah.
um and I just
At
think
the
like,
time, and it was like that very strongly.
right, and I mean, it's a great film. However, I think,
Mm,
like, if like taking it on with someone who like Laura Mars cast as like, like Kristen Stewart or Emma Stone, or I don't know, like something like an American actor who's or not necessarily an American actor, but like somebody who just
yeah.
is has already got, who's made some kind of iconic moves,
Mm,
and then making Laura Mars's photographs. Like there's so many incredible in the entire world, like so many amazing female photographers who, like, those could be Laura's photographs. And thinking about what it means for a woman to look through the lens to see another person being killed. I mean, um I don't know. And also the world of fashion. The original Laura Mars has a lot of scenes of like, fashion models with no clothes on, which is like, that probably happens backstage at fashion shows. But I think that there's the world of fashion and
does.
female fashion models. Like I think there's an opportunity to kind of like actually cast,
Mm,
Gigi and Bella Hadid, as like
yeah.
the
Yeah.
fashion models, and kind of rethink what that world is like contemporarily. So um yeah, I mean, I would love to remake The Eyes of Laura Mars. And the other one that I would love to remake is the reincarnation of Audrey Rose. I love that film with a very young kind of Anthony Hopkins, Marsha Mason. It's a
Yeah,
very strange story, right? About like a father who thinks that his daughter has been reincarnated
that's
as
right.
another daughter, and then he sort of sues for custody of that girl. I mean, thinking about right now, especially in the US, the debates around women's reproductive rights, it feels like there's another conversation around like who owns women's bodies, and so
It's a
yeah,
perfect
so
time.
so I've yeah, I mean, I always I'm thinking about like how I could remake something that a film that I already love so much, but like why a remake from my perspective would, be even like would contribute to the value of the original.
There's a movie on Hulu in America, Disney Plus in Australia, called Clock with Diana Agron about making a choice fertility. That's
Oh, okay.
turning into a horror, but it's really
Okay.
cool. And Halston Sage is an actor I think would be great as Laura Mars. There you go. I'm
Oh,
just
I'll check. Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
Halston Sage. Do you have a director's chair with your name on
No, absolutely not.
it?
Nope. No.
Okay.
No,
Where
I
you
move. No, I mean, on the one hand, I move around too much. Like I move around
you
too much
walk
on
around,
set.
point fingers,
Yeah,
people?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, or I'm kind of like I like to be, because there's like so much like very small or intimate moments that happen in front of my camera. Even
Yeah,
though I have like a video village, I have my own monitor, in the other room that's my monitor, which
yeah.
ostensibly would be the place where my director's chair would be. I like to park myself so often like behind my DP so that I can say to my actor, like, okay, stay right there where you are, stay in that zone, and like don't stop rolling, keep rolling, do it again, do it again. Like the for me, the directing is I have to be close to my actors, and I
Yeah,
have to I
I
have to
get
feel
that.
like I'm like, maybe it's again me as a dancer, like sitting and directing doesn't make any sense. Like I have to sometimes my crew will bring like an Apple box that has just like they've made a label that says on tape that says Jennifer Reeder. So
Yeah,
the closest I've gotten is like someone realizing that I need to sit down
that's
between
nice.
takes, and they've given me like an Apple box with a piece of tape that has my name on it, and that's as far as I want. I don't ever need anything like I don't need one of those like old school Cecil B. DeMille, director's chairs, because I want to remain the director who is where like my the line from me to my actor is organic.
Yeah,
And I don't think that you can do that if you're sitting in a high chair with your
true.
name on it.
At least it's a Apple box, not a soap box, right?
That's right, exactly.
Have you got any props or anything you can show me? Did you bring anything, out? Maybe I can have a look at before we go.
Well, I've got one thing. It doesn't look very impressive right now, but it sits here. So this is actually one of the so when Kirk opens up his locker and
Yeah,
all of these little baby heads fall out, all of this person's blood has worn off, but this is one
right.
of the actual baby heads that, and it just happens to fit onto a pencil. But this was actually one of the baby. Oh, there's some blood left,
Yeah, there's some
and
there.
I don't
Yeah.
know what this, maybe some hair that's on. But this is one of the little baby heads that fell out of that locker that I
So
stole
good.
from set, and it sits over here in my little pencil case.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for showing that to me. To wrap it up, please tell me why people always like to end with this question. Why should people watch Perpetrator? Like, what to choose from when you're going through thumbnails, and what will they get out of it from the genre side of things? Say, if people decide to watch Perpetrator Down Under.
Well, I mean, I would say first of all, anybody who's watching Perpetrator on Shudder is should be already a genre fan, you
Yeah,
know.
of course.
But I do think that Shudder is, or I mean, that's sorry, that Perpetrator for the Shudder fans, I think that Perpetrator is a very nuanced and provocative take on
Mm,
on a shapeshifter story, which could be
mm,
just more unexpected. And from my perspective, I want for Perpetrator to inspire conversations around the myth of the missing girl and who gets to be found when they go missing. Um, I want there to be a conversation around what not just women, but what we inherit through our families, for good or bad. And I want there to be perhaps a conversation around, again, this idea that we are better together. And if there's a sort of perpetrator watching party that's just like a lot of menstruating women, I mean, this would be the time to sort of have a red velvet cake with like lots of red wine. And I kind of want there to be perpetrator watching parties that are like an homage to the blood of women through menstruation or childbirth. I mean, that could be like a very I don't know how many parties that other films have inspired like that.
and certainly, me being me and face value, you might think, well, I'm not the right demographic, but I'm inquisitive. I watch everything and take it at quality value, and I look at everything in a movie. And although the demographic might be not be directly aimed at my age group, it doesn't matter. Like, I appreciate your movie, the characterizations, the acting, from all involved, and the music, and the ending was
Mm-hmm.
the ending was just the highlight because it did take a bit for me to get real engaged.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
then when I did it, you grabbed me. So congratulations, and I think the only way's up. You're already sky high, but is it more work with Shudder? These movies that you're writing now, what's next, or can you reveal anything?
I mean, I've got some. I mean, right now with like the writers and the actors strikes in the U.S., it's a little like things have kind of come to a screeching halt. But
Yeah.
when things open back up again, I've got two really gnarly scripts that are both ready to go. And yeah, I'm just like I said, like I love to work and I love to work fast. I mean, I like to also work smart.
Yeah.
Um, but I am so happy with the reception for Perpetrator. And I would say, I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to cast Alicia Silverstone was thinking about exactly your demographic, people who love Clueless
Yeah.
and who loved
Yeah.
seeing her and are like, oh yeah, what I want to see what she's up to. And it's absolutely not the case that I make films for an audience that's only young women or only other women. I really want my stories to feel
I can see that.
expansive, and I
Mm.
want the cinephiles to love it. I want the genre fans to love it. I want the film theorists, there's something there for the film, theorists, the academics, and the music lovers or the lovers of art. I feel like there's something, I kind of want it all. And I don't always get it, but I always try. But yeah, the other two projects that I have coming down the pike, I think they're more ambitious and yeah, I mean, I just keep every like I've gone from that sense like when we started this conversation where feeling like I didn't know how to become, I didn't know how to get to like where Martha Coolidge was or where Julie Dash was or where Chantal Ackerman was. And I don't know that I'm where they sort of like have been necessarily, but I do feel like I have kind of I've like built this kind of rope ladder from like
Yeah.
one like place on the ground to the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
And it feels pretty great to be here. And so now like the only place to go is up. And I feel encouraged to do that.
Alison Andrews, Fast Food Lodging comes to mind too.
Oh,
Um, not,
such a great, yeah, such a great
yeah.
film.
And maybe you could, The Lost Girls. Speaking of remakes, maybe The Lost Girls.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, just you being, I mean, speaking of another kind of shapeshifter, a classic teen shapeshifter story. I mean, the Lost Boys is something that I watch, once a month, just to kind of
Never
like,
gets old.
just to sort of like reset my brain.
And that's a great way to end.